Welcome to PR on the Record, the podcast that explores the role of PR in shaping success within the global tech ecosystem. I'm Ariel Shapiro.
And I'm Shani Ben Haim. Today we're joined by Danielle Blumenstyk Peterman, a seasoned communications leader with over 12 years of experience in PR, marketing, and strategy. She's currently the director of communications at Sola Security, which just emerged from stealth with a 30 million seed round and gained media coverage in TechCrunch, SiliconANGLE, and Dark Reading, amongst many others. Before Sola, Danielle began her career in the education and nonprofit sector before she transitioned to tech PR. She led AppsFlyer's global communications team, managing PR, thought leadership, and analyst relations before becoming their chief of staff. As the chief of staff, she led executive and internal communications, served as CEO's spokesperson, and managed strategic initiatives. Danielle holds a degree in communications and journalism from Hebrew University and a master's in diplomacy and conflict studies from Reichman University. With her extensive background in high-stakes launches and strategic messaging, she's here to share insights on the power of PR in shaping a company's success. Hello, Danielle, and welcome to PR on the Record. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's been some time since we last spoke. I needed to share that Danielle and I previously met many years ago. And when she was at AppsFlyer, she had interviewed me for a position at AppsFlyer. And although that didn't work out, it's what kind of set me on my own journey. So I'm so happy that it's come full circle. And now that we're here and we're able to now speak with you at your new role at Sola and hear more about your experience and how things are going there.
I love that. And I love, and Shani, we were talking about this before when we were discussing this, that this industry is actually pretty close-knit here in Israel, people doing comms and PR. And it's really great to have the opportunity, first of all, to have this community and to have these connections kind of come back around later. It's nice and it's good. It's one of the things that I really love about this community here.
Amazing. I'm so happy that now, we're able to connect and get into this really interesting conversation. But first, we introduced you and we talked about your vast experience and how you've kind of made the transition years ago into tech when you were previously in the nonprofit and education sector. Could you share a little bit about how these industries differ in approach for PR and storytelling?
So I think it's interesting. There are some differences, but there are also a lot of similarities. So I really learned my basics in PR from nonprofit and education. Inbal Khan, who used to be the spokesperson for IDC, was really my first mentor in the industry, taught me everything that I know. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, for me, at least when it came to education and nonprofit, was people are a lot of times so focused on doing the work that it's hard for them to set time aside to do the promotional work around it and to get them to see the value. For example, whether it be professors, whether it be people in nonprofits who are out in the field working on the important causes that are near and dear to their heart, to get them to take time away from that, to talk to press, to speak to someone who might be doing a panel or something like that. A lot of times to them, it feels like this, I don't have time for this. This is a waste of time. And that's very different in tech. I think people in tech understand better. And I think it's probably true for these days for nonprofits and education as well. People have a better understanding of how communications and social media can help push causes forward. But that was a big challenge that I was feeling, say, 15 years ago when I was starting out in communications. People did not want to spend time doing comms or doing press because it felt like their resources would be better spent elsewhere. And I think one of the similarities that I think is interesting and was interesting for me to learn as I was making the transition into technology is the ability to tell an interesting story. Because whether it be a reporter that focuses on nonprofits, or a reporter that focuses on education, or a reporter that focuses on cyber technology or AI, they want a story. They want something that's interesting. They want a narrative that readers can read about. And everybody at the end of the day wants their mother to be able to understand what they're writing about. So you have to turn all of those stories into something that's easily digestible. And we know how to do that as the PR pros. But it's interesting to really see, especially for me as a noob PR person, be like, oh, okay, I can transfer these skills. And that was something that was exciting for me as a new comms person.
That's a really interesting answer there. And you're right, I know people say PR is PR is PR, so you can kind of transfer those skills across industries. It's the same core. skills
Mhm.
there. Ultimately, I also came from the not-for-profit world, by the way, and I also had that experience of trying to get people to really understand why it's important. So I can
Yeah.
totally, that really resonated with me. And actually, I was going to ask you, because you've also made a different transition, which was you went from agency world to the in-house world, and that's something I've done as well. But I just wanted to get your take on what are the differences between the two roles.
So I'm a strong believer that every in-house person should start out in an agency. I think an agency is the best school you could get for PR. You really learn the ins and outs of the industry. You learn how to talk to press. You learn how to map for the right people. You learn how to build a story. You learn how to handle customers, and that's something that you have to do in-house as well. They're not external customers, they're internal customers, but nonetheless, you have to learn how to talk to them, how to communicate, how to make sure that you're landing your deliverables. And I think I am the good comms person that I am today, thanks to the 3 years that I spent in an agency. It really transformed me, really turned me into a significantly better professional. And I think the difference is really the exciting thing about an agency, and also the stressful thing about an agency, is that most people have multiple clients. Especially when you transition into a management role in an agency, then you're usually handling your own, say, strategic clients, and also clients that your team has.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be spread all over, and you have to do that well, and you have to be very well versed in different industries. I remember at a certain point, I was doing gaming, I was doing mobile tech, and I was doing, I think it was microchips at the time. And I
Oh,
had to
wow.
be very well versed in each one of those industries. The exciting thing on the other hand about doing things in-house is that you get to dive deep, and you have to be an expert. You have to be the person that everybody in the company and everybody external can come to with questions. You have to be able to explain what you do as well as you can to a reporter who is a tech reporter, and to someone's grandmother who's walking in the street and wants to understand what Sola Security does, for example. So I think there are really good things about both, but the combination is just chef's kiss. Like, to me, at least, the best comms pros, the best PR people are the ones that have done both.
That's so interesting. And it brings me to another question that is kind of like veering off the beaten track, I guess, if that's the right way to say it. But with that said, there's a story and there's a narrative, and how deep can it get on the technical level when you're in-house in terms of explanation? Again, probably at Sola, you're who you're targeting is they are technical people.
Mhm.
So how does that how do you shape the narrative in that dynamic when it gets to a technical point where as comms people we're very right side brain creative thinkers, are very good with words. How do you take that challenge and share it with your audience, I guess?
So I think one of the best things about our job is that you also get to talk to different kinds of people. So some reporters, and you guys know this, you've all worked with like the tech reporters in Israel. Tech reporters in Israel tend to be, they do everything hakol makol, as they say here,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to find a tech reporter here that's specifically AI or specifically cybersecurity. So the story also has to be more wide. It has to appeal to a wider audience. It has to usually have some kind of either B2C connection or some kind of financial tie-in, something that can make it a bigger story. Whereas when you're doing, if you're doing US press, then you can find a reporter for anything, probably for like microchips within cybersecurity, even like the most niche of niche. And the cool thing about Sola, for example, is that what I do is I choose the different speakers within Sola. So for some things, I'll take our CEO, Guy Flechter, who's the second time founder. He has a lot of experience talking about, building a company, building a team, getting product market fit. And then I also have the very robust security team here who can get into the nitty gritty of security. And those people are going to be the people who are talking to the cybersecurity reporters, the people that really want to understand the ins and outs of the product. And when building the overarching narrative, the bigger narrative has to be something that can resonate with anyone, but it has to be able to tie into the technical aspects as well. So when I build key messaging, I build bigger overarching key messaging, but also I have sub subplots for key messaging for the different speakers, for different industries, even for different geographic locations sometimes to make sure that it ties into the things that are relevant to them. So I might not always know everything, especially Sola. I've been at Sola for 3 months, and Sola doesn't know everything about Sola. We've only been around the company. We've been working on the company for I think a little under a year. Basically, I've been here for 3 months. I've been working on the company for a little under a year. It's still very much something that is evolving, and we're here for it, so we know what our narrative is now, but we don't know what it's going to be in 6 months. We might have to change some things, and that's also something very exciting that I didn't really get to experience before.
Oh, that is really exciting. And in many ways, the best part of a startup is that getting to shape the messaging that you're going to be putting out there.
Yeah.
And I know you were just talking about the journalists and finding the right journalists, say, in the US is much easier than Israel. But recently we've seen, newsrooms worldwide pretty much getting slashed.
Yeah.
And so has that impacted how you've gone about, getting stories?
I think for everyone working in PR in recent years, it just means you have to find a way to rise above the noise, because reporters used to get probably around 1,500 pitches a day, and now they're probably getting at least 3 or 4 times that, because they're the only people in their news desk that is handling tech, and maybe someone who used to only handle cybersecurity is now doing cyber AI and big government tech. It's exactly like you said. These newsrooms are being slashed. So to me, it's a few things. First of all, I am a very strong believer in working with agencies. So I have a strong PR agency that I work with, and I count on them for their relationships and for also being able to inform me about these changes and these shifts, because it's very hard for an in-house person to be able to monitor that on their own, especially if you're a global PR person working across multiple regions and you're trying to understand, like, wait, does this person at TechCrunch still work there, or did they move to Business Insider? And so that's one part of it. And it is also, your stories have to be tight. I think there used to be this conception that relationships will get you everywhere in PR, and I don't think that's true. I think even if the editor of TechCrunch is my best friend, they're not going to cover a story if it's not good. They're not going to cover a story if it doesn't provide value to their readers. So it's making sure, first of all, that I don't spam them. I'm not going to try and pitch a story that's not interesting. And that also requires a lot of internal education within the company, working with founders to understand just because we're excited about this doesn't mean that the rest of the world is going to be excited about it. We have to explain why it's exciting for them. And if we can't, then maybe we shouldn't pitch this. Maybe we need to wait for the next story. Maybe we need to find a different story. And I think that's a big part of it. It's finding where you can, within your product, within what you're working on, provide the interesting stories, provide either little tidbits or big stories when you have them. If you have a funding story, that's amazing. But most companies don't have a funding story once every few months. So you have to work around the funding stories and find good stories, find interesting news to give. I think that's what it comes down to in the end.
Amazing. And I'm sure you're speaking from recent experience, because really excitingly, Sola Security just raised 30 million in their seed and got amazing coverage in the news to be able to spread the word out. And it was truly fantastic. When I saw that, I was so excited. And because I'd known you and have seen you through your journey, it was just really exciting to see that you were part of this. So building that, and like you said, you have your strategies where you're subdividing different key messages into different geographics, and also, like you said, trying to keep up with who's in the newsrooms to be able to cover the certain story. But before that, like, how was that to build a strategy around creating media coverage for such a high profile kind of launch and emergence from stealth as well?
So that was actually very interesting, because I joined Sola at the beginning of January. We initially had planned to come out of stealth mid-Feb. Obviously, life is what happens when you make other plans. It ended up being mid-March. But far before I joined it, around July, I think, there was a leak, which often happens again here in Israeli tech news. And it was actually covered. It was covered in Kalkalist, and it was picked up by CTech. So the part of the funding was already covered. It was already out there, which was a major challenge, as you guys know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening who are in PR know. Once it's out, it's out. And even though it was only in Israel in the beginning, but both some of the people here at Sola and other people that I was working with were saying, well, it was only Israel. Like, yeah, but it was in Israel in English. And when you search Sola Security, you find it. And we knew it was very clear to me and the agency that we were working with. We knew that we needed to come up with a strategy to make the story interesting, despite the fact that the news had to some extent been out there. So we're very fortunate to have one of our investors who is a pretty high profile investor, and he's done a lot of very significant investments. He used to work with Sequoia as well. And we saved him for this. And we knew that we wanted him for like a top tier interview. We were aiming for TechCrunch. We got TechCrunch. They had an incredible conversation with the reporter. And that was kind of when we felt like we had that, and that was also not easy to get. That's like a whole different story. It was a lot of work getting that interview and the story and getting the reporter to understand it. She also wanted to see a demo of our product, which not a lot of reporters are interested in getting that technical and are able really to understand that level of kind of like what a security person would be using when they see our product. So we built it around that. We knew we needed to give something extra, something more that we did that wasn't out in the leak. And it worked. And it was a lot of hard work, but it paid off. And even here in Israel, we were worried about that they might not cover, and they did cover again. And they covered basically what the product was because it leaked, but we weren't out of stealth. So we still had an interesting story to tell. We were all very excited that it worked.
Yeah, that's a really good example of the fluidity and the way that kind of PR is so fast paced, and you've got to really think on your feet to stick with the reality, because you'd planned everything and then the reality changes, as you said. But I think for funding news generally, it is exciting, and the specific news, 30 million, is a lot of money generally. But in the tech world, it's not always such a large amount. We saw other companies get acquired for billions, potentially. So, in some ways, it's not so exciting for a reporter when they're comparing the two sums. So, how do you go about setting the expectations of the CEO and the board and everyone who is very excited about it, but deep down that it might not be as exciting to a reporter?
So first of all, I think we were fortunate. A 30 million seed round that was pretty massive. In a sense, the amount was exciting, but I completely agree with you. And it goes back to what I said before. A lot of times it's really about managing expectations and making sure people know if something can be extremely exciting for us, but not be exciting enough for press. And it also, the level of dependency that we have on just life and general, the news cycle. For example, I initially wanted our launch date to be March 18th. The news about Wiz broke, if I'm not mistaken, on March 17th or 18th. It was supposed to be on the same day. And I was sitting here in the office watching it unfold, just like kissing the floor out of gratitude. Thank God we did not delay, because when you have, like you said, Ariel, when you have a 30 billion sales story, no one would even care about, who cares about a 30 million seed? Even Next Insurance got sold, I think, for 2 billion, that like 2 days later, the next day, that barely got mentioned. It's an incredible story. It's a great company. It's a huge sum of money. But just because another company got sold for 32 billion the day before, it almost sounds like chump change, like 2 billion. Okay, like who cares even? But had that story come out 3 days earlier, it would have been phenomenal. They would have gotten wall-to-wall coverage. And just because of the news cycle and our dependency on the gods of the news cycle, that story got, I'm sure they were very disappointed about the coverage that they got. And I feel for them. As a comms person, you look at that and you go, oh my God, it's such a good story. But sometimes we can't help what happens. And that's something that's very important from the get-go. I think one of the things that I learned from one of my previous managers was communicate even when there's nothing to communicate. And I think that that's something that's crucial when it comes to PR. You have to, at every step of the way, say, this is what we're working on, this is what we're aiming for, but this is also the reality of what might and might not happen. And we always have to be prepared for the worst. We're aiming for the best, but preparing for the worst. And then worst case, we're always going to be pleasantly surprised. But I never, never, ever overpromise. And I also don't trust PR agencies that overpromise. I think it's very important for that to also be something that you have with a company that you partner with. Everything needs to be realistic. Everything needs to be something that they can handle, and don't promise me something that you can't deliver.
100%. I always say, Ariel and I we're independent PR specialists that work in front of companies, and when we're often in front of these introductory conversations with prospective clients, they say, what kind of coverage can you get me? What can you get me into TechCrunch? Can you get me into this? Can you get me into that? And I was like, let's step back and understand what your goals are. And, just because we have relationships with these reporters. What kind of story do we have to tell? And let's manage your expectations to see like what exactly we can do. We can say, we know as comms people that once the gears get going, you just have to continue to make them work, to create media coverage and keep it going. And it's really hard to stop any PR efforts in the middle and then think you're going to pick up and continue where you left off, whenever you want to pick it up. It's a constant shifting of the gears and making sure that everything is working and balancing the expectations. It all comes into one package. Like you said, preparing for the worst, and at the least, you'll be pleasantly surprised, in your words.
Yeah, and I think that's also something I often mentor people who are really getting into the PR industry, or people who are starting a new in-house position. And people ask me, like, what's my biggest tip when you're hiring an agency, for example? And I always say, make sure you have the capacity to give them what they need, because even the best agency cannot provide success if they don't have collaboration with someone in-house. They need the content, they need the expertise. These aren't things that can be manufactured on their own without collaboration.
So it's just funny that you say that, because last week I had a call with a prospective client, and I asked them exactly what they somehow just, also perfect timing aligns. They were looking for a PR agency, but I asked them like specifically what for. And without saying so much, they wanted to announce some sort of partnership with their partner needing native language press in European countries. And as I am a native English speaker, and I have the Hebrew for conversationally, but my whole shtick is that I help companies in Israel get U.S. coverage or native English language coverage in different markets. I told them if they have a goal to get more buzz in their industry, and their industry is in those native language markets in Europe, I'm not the person for you. But, happy to see if anybody else knows. If you know, I'll ask you after the podcast. But so essentially I was just like, it's true, because also what I say is that we want to be together on a winning team. The clients that I work with, their success is my success, because if I don't do a good job, essentially, it's a small world here. It's a small ecosystem, and it's important. So, communicating that and having that click in terms of working together, it's so important, especially with PR and comms, especially when we can't guarantee anything. So you've had, like I said, a wealth of experience. Can you share an experience where PR had a very tangible impact, whether in reputation building or business growth, either from your time at Sola, even though it's been such in a short amount of time with such exciting news coming out, or in one of your previous roles?
Well, I think actually Sola is a great example, because basically Sola Security is a PLG product. There's no sales team. And we were very heavily relying on brand with everything having to do with the launch. And there was a lot of concern about that as well, because obviously nobody knows us. There's some clout with our founder, and some clout with people in the security industry getting to know us. But there was a lot was lying on the shoulders of PR, social media, and our general brand building. And that's something that our VP marketing, Minnie Katzenmeyer, who brought me on, really kind of she said, I don't want to scare you, but a lot of this is going to be on you. And I think, first of all, as you said, it worked out very well. And we can see that a lot of people are coming in thanks to the success of the launch. Obviously, we have to put our money where our mouth is and continue the growth. And it's still very early days. But it is exciting to see the impact that you can have with an extensive comms campaign on a brand new company. So you can definitely see the impact there. That's one example. At AppsFlyer, I think one of the things, first of all, the difference, I'm currently the only comms person at Sola, obviously. It's a very small team. I, at some point, I had a team of 5 people at AppsFlyer and 3 more people who were on global comms dotted to me, and the ability to bring impact with a team so big doing comms is insane. And I think some of the things that we did there that were super interesting, also on the employer branding side, and having kind of like the need to, especially around 2021, 2022, when everyone in the tech industry was scrambling for top talent, to kind of tie everything in between social media, employer brand, and PR to focus on hiring needs. And that's something that's a very different challenge than business growth. And at some point, we really did shift our, specifically some of our, obviously not everything, but some of our comms and PR efforts towards that. And it had a very significant impact, a significant measurable impact, because we would also speak to candidates and we would speak to employees who would then start with us and get that feedback and understand how much of an impact it had. Everything at AppsFlyer is extremely data driven, and it's like that also at Sola Security, which is exciting for me. So we're really also we're measuring everything. We're measuring social media. We're measuring. You guys know it's not always easy to measure PR, but there are ways to measure it if you really want to, and to look and to see that impact, for example, in growth, in CVs, in relevant CVs that are for positions that are hard to fill, to see chatter online be excited about the company that you're doing PR for, to see it even happening almost. I like how people call it, it's organic. It's organic. You've been working for a year and a half to try and get more people talking about a company, and then all of a sudden when you see it in the Facebook groups, like, oh, it's organic. Well, it's not organic. We've been working on this for 18 months. You think it's organic because you're only seeing it now. We know the whole process that made this happen. So yeah, working on something like that and seeing the impact, it's amazing, because I thought, to some extent, I thought I would never feel the excitement that I did, having such a big team at AppsFlyer, and then working here at Sola Security and being the person doing everything like with my 10 fingers. That was a whole different level of excitement, and seeing that we can still make that impact happen. Obviously, nothing is a solo job. Everything, the leadership at Sola Security and working with the entire marketing team here, that's incredible, very small, very talented group of people. But to get to really touch every aspect of that has been so exciting, and to see the impact has been extremely rewarding.
Yeah,
That was a rant.
not
Did
at
it.
all. That was really, really interesting. And yeah, you talk about the organic, lots of different things. But what I suppose, when you're building a company out of stealth mode, like you just done,
Mhm.
it presents its own challenges that you don't have ordinarily when you've been working for those 18 months or longer to build the brand. So can you just talk about like how you kind of approached that challenge?
So I think that's honestly a challenge that we're still tackling to some extent, because, like I said, the pace of things moving in a startup and the pace of change is so extreme in the best way possible. But yeah, it did require, first of all, coming out of stealth was something that people here were very excited about, but also a little bit maybe apprehensive towards, because it's the first time that we had to make sure that everyone was talking in one voice. So when for example, I started reviewing materials when I came here, I asked for a product demo, and I asked to speak to business operations and to the CEO and to basically everyone who's in leadership. And every single person gave me a different value proposition. Every single person gave me a different vision. They were all similar. They weren't completely out of left field, but they weren't the same. The language was very different and the words were very different. So the first thing that I did was work on a document that basically consolidated everything to make sure that we're all aligned on a singular message, and then we're all able to give that value in a consistent way. Especially when you're doing interviews, you guys know this, to make sure that even if I have the CEO or the COO interviewing, I need to make sure that they're speaking the same language, even if it's in different fonts, but it needs to be the same language. So that was a big part of the work that we had done beforehand. Other parts of coming out of stealth were also kind of building the infrastructure to making a big splash when we came out. So this Sola Security is not big. We're 44 people currently. Obviously, we had PR strategy, working with agencies. We were hoping for good coverage. Everybody knows until it's actually live, we don't believe that the coverage is coming out. Social media also is owned, and we were trying to basically do as much as we can with what we can control. So I also built a very extensive strategy around employee engagement, making sure that all the employees not only had content to share on the day of, but understood the value. And that's something that I got a lot of feedback on afterwards. that at different companies they were at, they were expected to maybe post or like posts from the company out of fear, out of like, we need this, you guys have to do this. And I took a lot of time here to explain to people why I want them to do it, what we're going to gain from it, how algorithms on social media work so that it can extend our coverage and extend our reach. And it got people excited about it and very passionate about it. And when I started getting complaints day of from other people saying, all I see on my LinkedIn feed is Sola Security, I said, excellent, my work here is done. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted you to hate me. And they did. And it worked. And that's something that the employees here got so excited because I really thought at first that people would just copy paste the content that I had prepared for them. But because people understood the value, they really took the time to kind of like get their emotions out. Because some of the people have been here for whether it be a year or a few months, but they haven't been able to talk about what they do, and to put that into their social media posts. And even the individual social media posts got very good traction, and it was very significant towards getting more traction into our LinkedIn page and through that to our website, and for people to sign up for the waiting list.
That's amazing. And you like mentioned really quickly, like, you know, that a lot of it was owned versus like, you know, we talk about earned media and all that stuff. Do you think that the impact differs between them, or if one is more than the other, or how do they kind of work together? I mean, I'm asking so many questions in one sentence, but you know, they're really sometimes married to each other in that aspect, but is there a way to separate them, you think? And if so, how would you create or measure the impact of each one?
So I don't think it's really possible to only do one thing. I think doing this day and age, doing only paid or only owned or only earned doesn't really make sense. It depends on the stage that you're at in the company. Like, for example, we have two major growth engines here that we're counting on at Sola Security, which is what we're calling organic, which is the things that I handle, which is earned and owned, and growth. Obviously, we have Ademiri, who's our head of growth, who handles everything having to do with growth and paid. And we very much work together, whether it be on creatives, whether it be on campaigns. It's always a conversation about how we can complement each other and how we can be more than the sum of our parts together. As far as measurement, paid is a lot easier to measure. That is the blessing and the curse of paid, and the blessing and the curse of brand, because when you can't measure something as accurately, obviously it's easier to tell a story about it, but it's also harder to prove that it's worth putting money into, because it's funny because we call it earned, but you obviously, even if it's not, you're not paying for the placement, but you're paying for the PR agency, you're paying for the communications director. It's different. It's a different mindset, and it's very hard for non-marketing and non-comms people to wrap their heads around it, because a lot of times like, oh, if we're paying the agency, how come I didn't get coverage in the New York Times? Like, that's not how your life works. It's if we could pay for coverage in the New York Times, my God,
Our jobs would be much easier.
Exactly, but very different.
Of
you know,
course,
at the end of the day, it's just not the same thing. So I think it's important to measure. I do think that when it comes to brand and comms specifically, it's important to measure, but not to get analysis paralysis and not to be completely overwhelmed by measurement, that you don't listen to your heart and listen to your gut feeling, because sometimes your gut feeling is going to be more accurate than the measurement. And I think that's something that is very important to remember in marketing in general, but specifically with everything having to do with brand. And I think that's something that also why it's important for brand and growth to work together, because at the end of the day, the good brands make people feel something about them. And if you're pushing one way, if brand is pushing one way and growth is pulling the other way, and you're trying to make people feel different things, then they're not going to feel anything. So it's very important to have that collaboration and to make sure that everyone's on the same page and kind of like going down the same path.
Yeah, that was a great point. You know, we need to make sure everything is kind of pulling in the right direction to achieve the goals, make people feel, you know, the emotions that we want them to feel. I feel like marketing, PR in general, in the last 5 years, has become much more focused on the human side and the you know, people and their emotions, and it used to be that everything used to be much more polished, but now, as you can see from, you know, this podcast, from YouTube, from all those kind of, you know, different new media, if you want to call it that, or social media, people kind of expect a different experience. Was that something that was easy for you to kind of pivot from the old school PR to the new school?
It definitely wasn't easy, but it's necessary. And I think it's funny because it's something I was recently discussing with a few colleagues. I think several people in our industry, it's easy to be stuck in the old days because that's how we were trained. It's how a lot of us grew up, and it's how a lot of us learned how to do PR. But the world's
Mm.
changed, everyone's on social media now. Influencers are becoming, in some markets, even more substantial than reporters, even because the reach is just something that's not, you can't match it when in traditional media press coverage. It's something that people need to take into consideration in every marketing strategy. And the connection also between social media and company social media, employee social media, how that all ties in with PR, interacting even with reporters and press on social media as well. A lot of those things have really shifted in the past few years. And I think in the beginning, I think it was something that was a little bit of an adjustment for me because I think as people, we're all change averse, right? We all want to be like, oh, this is what I've done until now. It's worked. I want to keep doing it. So yeah, so we're all change averse, but I think that the exciting thing about PR is you almost don't have a choice because we're working with press and because we're always having to craft the most interesting stories and build narratives that are not only interesting but also relate to what's happening today. It's very hard for us to stay in the past. So it was hard, but it's a blessed change, and it's something that I really feel also helps me keep finding new and exciting interest in the trade, and it's never the same. No day is the same. No campaign even is the same. It looking at a funding, this funding round that I did with Sola Security was completely different than any funding round that I did at AppsFlyer or at the agency I worked at before. And that's part of it. And it's hard, but it's good. It's good for us. It's good for the industry. The only thing that I'm sad about is that there are less and less reporters out there. They are all either losing their jobs or switching to tech companies. And that's something that we're losing a lot of good ones in the past few years. And that's something that is upsetting to me. But other changes in our industry, bring it on. I love it. I think it's exciting. It's good for us.
Bring it on. It's amazing. It really is, I've been in PR for actually, like, I was just thinking about this. I thought it was 6 years, but I've been here for 7 years. And it feels like such a short time in that time period, but you just see how vastly the environment has changed for us, and evolving to that is part of what I love about PR. Not just the dynamicism of our work in terms of strategy and how we can change that, but also it creates the extra challenge. It makes me excited. It's just all encompassing, and like you said, it's more challenging. It's tough to see great journalists move on from and go into different fields and really not see their names and their bylines anymore. And of course, the shift has largely been in part to, terms of money and advertisements, because like the media is a business in itself, correct? And it's partially due to the emergence of AI and new technologies and stuff like that coming into really people thinking that it could be a replacement for humans in terms of words, when we know, as you said, it's a more of a human and human connection, what you spoke with Ariel, that people value when it comes to communications. And I guess to keep me from rambling on, because I can talk on this topic for the longest time, we'll end with one last question, and I guess that is, what advice would you give to any other startup that's preparing to announce their emergence from stealth mode, or any other exciting company news with today's PR landscape and how it is now?
My advice would be, I'll do three, but I'll make them short. First of all, manage expectations internally and externally. Second of all, make sure your story is tight and doesn't have BS in it. Avoid the word revolutionizing to the best of your ability, because nobody believes you're revolutionizing anything. And three, it's not just about PR. You have to have an overall brand strategy. You have to have social media. You have to have a company that doesn't use its employees these days is leaving money on the floor. You cannot afford it. You have to get your employees engaged and you have to have a good strategy for that. I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Danielle, for joining us. It was lovely to have this kind of full circle moment for me.
Me too.
And it was great to meet you from my
Thank
point
you
of view.
so much. I had fun. Thank you both.
That was our conversation with Danielle Blumenstyk Peterman, Director of Communications for Sola Security. We hope it gave you more insight into what it truly takes to have a successful PR strategy upon emergence from stealth.
Also, as always, if you're a founder trying to get your startup noticed, a marketer looking to up your PR game, or just curious about the stories behind the headlines, we hope this conversation gave you more of an inside look.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and if you have any questions or suggestions on topics that we should talk about, send us your thoughts at prontheRec@gmail.com. That's prontheREC@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening. I'm Shani.
And I'm Ariel. This is PR on the record, going off the record. See you next time.
Bye.